Hello, Internet. My name is Chamomile.
And I'm Zorgalax, he who waits behind, the insatiable night, Lord of the Quiet Death, all that stuff.
Yeah, I know I've heard that name before. You're the guy who was supposed to help me with the Maleficent dragon fight, weren't you?
Yeah, I got kind of busy, and it was kind of fun watching you get killed so many times. I still have a claim on your body, though. It does kind of look like you're in the process of transcending it. Those are some really cool tentacles you're growing, by the way.
Yeah, no, I don't really need the old one for anything. I guess you can have it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit salty about you taking the claim on the body without actually helping me win the fight, but I mean, I'm not using it, so whatever.
Well, turns out the real Zorgalax was inside you the entire time.
It certainly appears so.
So you got a ton of experience points.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do with them all. Now I'm good at 5th dot and common for viewers. Right now I still haven't made very good use of it. Yes, you have, I don't know how much attention you have been paying to this playthrough, Zorgalax, but we are coming into the home stretch right now. So to save a professor who's being held in protective custody by a bunch of religious nutjobs.
I'm sure that'll end well.
Honestly, I don't know if we're kidnapping or rescuing.
Going somewhere?
So given your proclivities, I'm guessing you're generally not a fan of vampire slayers.
No. I mean, I'll give Buffy a pass because she had just such a fantastic sense of style about it, but broadly speaking... And I mean, if that bot guy was anything to go by, for that matter, all those guys you fought in the subway station rescuing Ash. Right.
Thank you for donating to the blood drive. The Red Cross has gotten very aggressive.
Okay, yeah. Direct assault, not a good idea, even with 4 dots in Thaumaturgy. Let's try to approach this with the slightest bit of forethought and planning this time.
Which Kachula, seems like the type who would, have these really elaborate plans rather than just charging in.
Yeah, it was definitely a factor of me having just booted up the game, immediately hopped into a cab to the next quest, and, kind of gotten myself stuck in while I was still orienting myself as to what I was even doing. Have I spent my...
Going somewhere?
After I spent the XP, so we can just hop straight back to the Society of Leopold. And although I do have a stealth of 4, distance. I probably should have found Heather before I sank them.
So since you're pretty pro-vampire, and in most movies the vampires are the bad guys, do you like most vampire movies?
I mean, terrible things do tend to happen to them at the end, which is tragic, but I still get to spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours watching them do sweet vampire stuff, so I'll take it.
That's fair.
And in movies where the vampires are the good guys, they do tend to be defanged.
So not actually a fan of Twilight is what I'm getting.
Definitely not. And I mean, that's not... Got it. Alright.
Was the... Wait. Was the Oriental Rift that they did at the moment we did it really necessary?
Yeah, it was not, but that happens every time you stealth kill anyone. I have it basically memorized because of that one tutorial playthrough I did before they patched it, where with like 7 or 8 dots in stealth, but no stealth disciplines at all. I was basically invisible to the Sabbat, got through the entire Sabbat final dungeon that we'll be getting to in a second, just by crouching around, walking around right in front of them. Basically, so long as I didn't physically bump into them, they couldn't see me. And then I would hear that riff just over and over again, like hot flash and stuff.
We're not currently doing Quaid stuff, but there's I was looking through the Kindred of the East book, and one of the apparently terms for Kuei Jin is Cathian, coming from the medieval European word Cathay, which is what they refer to China. So one of the in-game terms for Chinese vampire essentially just means Chinese person, which doesn't seem like a great idea.
Okay, this is a bad way to get shot. I'm gonna have to kill all these guys eventually, though. Side first, they have rather defensive position. Okay, we are getting rid of my crummy old shotgun here. Did I accidentally pick it back up? I did. Drop it for realsies.
Also, guess what country the Oriental Rift originated in?
My first guess is going to be like
I would say you're, like, geographically, you're technically not close. Culturally, you're very close.
Alright, so which one is it?
It's the United States.
United States? Okay. I guess I probably should have guessed that. That was my second guess.
That was a pretty good guess, like... Technically, you had one of the words correct. This is not going so hot for Coachella.
Yeah. That one right there was just me getting cocky, mostly.
And you're all out of bodies to offer to me.
But now I can get more delicious blood.
Also, what did that bus station ever do to you?
Listen, I have history with that bus station, okay? You don't want to hear the details, but just trust me. This is a long time coming.
Master?
I guess I'll just... Because, you know, normally I can feed on her without activating this, but I guess this works too. And when I do it through dialogue, I get the thing where I do the club feeding. And I'm all seductive and cool about it, rather than just, like, pouncing on her.
So what is a vampire movie that you like?
That's a good question. Because I don't watch a ton of movies.
Going somewhere?
What's a piece of vampire media that you like, then? I just didn't need to be so,
Yeah. And
narrow.
this is a really good vampire video game that we're doing right now.
It is.
I find it delivers very well on that, like, you know, makes you feel like a vampire thing. You know, I've gone through a couple of other vampire games, and the one that made me feel like some kind of vampire. I haven't tried all of them. There's one that's like Vampire with a Y. It's supposed to be pretty good, but I haven't tried yet. But yeah, every other game I've tried has not been as good as this one, so you know, props for that. Bloodlines is the best vampire game.
Greetings, Commander.
Hottest take,
Greetings, soldier.
2004.
Anything to report? The Gladius Day has told us to keep a sharp eye. He thinks we may have some visitors this evening.
It's like a back entrance or something.
Okay, this was unwise. Bottomless pits.
I'd say this video game is pretty good. Interview with the Vampire, the novel, I think is pretty good.
Yeah. The Anne Rice.
I know we bragged.
First half of
I know we-
Dracula was very good.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
The first half of Dracula was really good.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I know you and Requiem ragged on Dracula, but like the first half of it is very, very good, even for like late 1800s novel. Like it's pretty compelling. It's just after they wrap up the Lucy arc, it doesn't seem like Bram Stoker really knew what to do.
And I do really like Buffy and Angel. Which,
Coldest Girl in Cold Town, we've talked about. That's an excellent short story.
it is. Bug on the doors. Leading out of the chantry. Hopefully it won't repeat itself.
I really liked Werner Herzog's remake of Nosferatu.
I did not see that one. So,
It broad strokes very similar to the original 1920s Nosferatu, but it's more focused on Lucy, who is essentially has taken over Mina's role. She's I don't think his name is Harker in the movie, the Harker equivalent's wife. And she's the protagonist, and it ends on a much more grim note than Dracula or either the movie or the first Nosferatu.
Going somewhere.
Mina does successfully. Not Mina. Lucy does successfully get Dracula to feed on her and then die from the light of the sun, and then she dies, and then it's Harker, who had been fed on by Dracula, has in the meantime become a vampire, and he escapes and he runs off to go continue the plague. Like, it's a very downbeat ending, but it works. Also really focuses on the disease aspect that comes in Nosferatu. The whole city that they're in is ravaged by the plague, and there's one point that Lucy is, I think I might have mentioned this, or Requiem might have mentioned this, that Lucy's walking through the essentially abandoned town, and there are rats everywhere, and she comes to a table of people having dinner, and one of them was like, "Oh, care to join us? We're celebrating the end of the world. We all have the plague." Which...
Yeah, I did get brought up on camera.
But that was by Requiem, so totally different person. You're just destroying these quadruplets. There's also this one scene in the 70s version of Salem's Lot where the kid has been turned into a vampire, and he's lingering at his friend's window and scratching at the door, asking to be let in. That's really chilling. The movie itself has not aged super well, and it's a Stephen King adaptation, so we all know what that entails. But... The Transfiguration was an interesting take on the vampire. I don't know if you've ever heard or seen of that.
I had not heard that one, no.
So, it's this young African-American kid who lives in a project, and he is obsessed with vampires. He goes out
For the last bit of
at night. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I mean, he's obsessed with vampires, so, you know, he is a boy acting like a
Seems like maybe 13. I not really sure. Maybe younger than that. And he goes out at night, and what he'll do is he attacks people and either kills them or knocks them out and drinks their blood. He's not actually like a vampire, because like it's shown he can't even digest the blood. Like the first scene, he knocks this guy out and drinks his blood, and then a second later he's throwing it up in the in a trash can, which is...
Who among us has not attempted to ingest human blood just to see?
That is a actual psychiatric condition of wanting to of clinical vampirism, sort of similar to clinical lycanthropy. Like, this is more of a... I think it might be more of a symptom than like a specific disorder.
Right.
The Vampire Casebook has one article written by a psychiatrist who talks about how about different people who have this condition. And so I think in the transubstantiation, the transfiguration, it's something like that. He has some sort of, because you see him in office as a therapist or a school counselor, and she's asking him, like, do you still have violent fantasies? Are you hurting anybody? And he's like, no. And he's very aware that what he's doing is wrong, and he's trying to control it. He's trying to make himself only do it to people who deserve it, but he knows he can't. And he's very vulnerable and very dangerous at the same time. That's in a way that's really interesting.
Yeah, it does sound interesting.
Like, it's a vampire movie that doesn't feature any vampires, which I also think is a fun little twist. I've heard good things about A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I've never actually managed to watch it. It's set in Iran. About a girl vampire who walks alone at night and attacks people who attack her.
So, like, people just attack her on sight?
I think it's doing a sort of like a feminist thing about her being out in the night when she's vulnerable, but not actually being vulnerable. I haven't actually watched it, so I don't actually know.
That is fair.
Lord, I pray now that you give me strength in battle, that I might overcome the hordes of Satan and his children, that I might wield the
I think Carmilla's a classic, obviously. It's pretty good.
Bad news.
that my victories are many and my will is few. That
The Vampire by Polidori is one of the first
if I meet death,
works of fiction in English about it, and it's pretty good. That's not fair. He was sneaking up on you. That was your job.
And I wasn't able to activate, like, apparently the fucking laser trap blocks my blood theft, because, like, I was about to pop that guy who was praying with my Tremere powers, but it wouldn't let me. Which is some serious bullshit.
The Lost Boys is pretty fun. Like, it's very much an 80s movie, but
Yeah.
still enjoyable. I don't know if you've ever watched that.
I have. Watch or rewatch for this shit now. And I guess I still could. But I'm not yet.
Because I am a primordial being, I know all things, and I know you and Requiem discussed it.
Yeah. This assault rifle is not as helpful as I thought it would be. The advantage of an assault rifle is supposed to be its accuracy. Well, this is the plus patch. Which I don't remember here. I mean, you know, sometimes I just don't remember things, but...
Requiem meant to watch the 1930s version of Dracula before this, but I cast him into the abyss before he managed to.
Separate from the casting for Lonely, I have to assume?
Yeah, he's not happy.
How many horrible otherworldly places are there to cast someone?
As many as your heart desires.
So that's going to be at least 13 then. I have a thing for 13s. Also, Requiem got cast into an abyss? I feel like maybe I should do something about that.
Yeah, it's fine. He'll find his way out of there eventually. I just really wanted to get on the podcast. I love podcasts.
Well, that's fair.
People don't know this about Eldritch Horrors, but we all love podcasts. Like, Cthulhu has been trying to get on My Brother and Me for like millennium, and like I don't think that podcast has even existed that long. Like I don't know what is going on with him.
I was about to ask, like, when did that podcast come out?
Time is an illusion.
No, cool. See, these lasers still appear to be detecting me. It says they're set for human heat signature now, but like, they still very much appear to be lasers, so I don't know how you can set a laser to only burn something of a certain temperature.
What'd you do?
Plenty of lockpicking. Oh, I don't actually have enough. Oh, that's the problem. I know how to fix this. It's because my dexterity has been lowered.
Gotta change outfits.
Yeah, Auspex helps my hacking, not my... That wouldn't even help anyway. Okay. Just change my clothes real quick.
That's an ominous sound.
I better get into my armor.
Who's there? Who's there? Drop! Stop!
The Magnus Archives had a mini arc with vampires that I really liked.
Yeah, the Magnus Archives version of the vampire reminded me a little bit of Darkest Dungeon version of the vampire, in that it was a very neat new take on the concept.
I liked the Crimson Court vampires. I was never able to beat Crimson Court.
Neither was
Like,
but I liked what they were.
And the annoying thing about Crimson Court is the expansion forces you to engage with it because you're constantly getting those little courtiers who give you invitations, but also infect you with vampirism, and it's so hard to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, Darkest Dungeon is also just such a long game. I'd already played through it once when the DLC came out, and I'd taken a few stabs at playing through it again with the DLC, but, I mean, it's a real campaign. They did come out with a Radiant mode, but I was not able to get through more than the first couple of weeks of that.
Who's there?
He just didn't notice all the gunshots that have been going on. Like, they're just all oblivious.
Well, I mean, he hadn't heard anything for 6 seconds, so...
So these like Catholic vampire hunters?
I don't know if they're specifically Catholic. They are vaguely Christian, certainly, and this place does look pretty Catholic. Although, now that I think about it, I do believe they mentioned that they are like a secret branch of the church. Oh, I said that to, why did I set that to vampire? I need to set the heat signature to human. Here we go.
There's a novel called Vampires, but with the S spelled like a $sign, about
a lot of rockets and artillery shells in here.
Yeah, for vampire hunting. Everyone knows that's a classic vampire hunter weapon, a rocket launcher.
I mean, should I be nervous?
I'm sure you're fine. But there was a novel called Vampires, $sign, about a Catholic vampire hunting society.
Presumably either they or their targets were... the $sign just because they had swag?
I don't know.
These guys are being very sporting about allowing me to duck behind the corner, heal up, wait for my blood theft to
Is he glitched out?
He's very interested in that wall.
It's a very lovely wall.
Yeah, this fourth dot in thaumaturgy that allows me to just auto-murder anyone who doesn't auto-murder anyone vulnerable to Tremere magic, basically, and then get blood for doing it. Like, very helpful. Oh, yeah, the uncommon sarcophagus. These guys are investigating the mummy. That's why we have to kill them and try to romance the mummy. We can't let them beat us to it.
When are they going to come out with a mummy game like this that just really gets you into being a mummy?
I have an interior key, but I'm not sure what to use it on.
Did you watch the movie, the original Buffy movie?
I never did. It's weird because it's sort of pseudo-canon. They make references that kind of imply that events similar to that happened in universe. But I never did watch that.
I never watched a little bit of Buffy. It was briefly on Netflix, and I kept meaning to watch it. I watched like a season. Actually, I don't think I even finished the first season.
Yeah, I got through the whole thing while it was still on Netflix.
I do really like the first Evil as a concept. Like, just the fact that he, or it, I guess, or can't really directly affect anything. It just has to push people to do stuff for it.
Actually, I don't think the execution was all that great. Season 7, when the first evil appears, is actually kind of weak. Not the worst season, but I do like the idea. But unfortunately, I don't really like what was ever done with it. So that probably just opens this place, which there should have to be something down here. Okay, here we go. Secret tunnel. Secret tunnel.
The Magnus Archive vampires, though, we could talk about them for a second.
Sure. Since this is, the official Magnus Archives podcast. No, this is the actual Magnus Archive. Shut up. Why can't I blood shield? I would like to be blood shielded right now.
Like, they were still very recognizable as vampires, but they had this whole thing where they don't talk, but people think they're talking, and they just lap out blood instead of like having fangs. It really made me think of the vampire as like an other, as sort of this abject other that is really in the folklore. I thought it was a really neat take on the vampire.
Yeah. He's recognized as a vampire, but it is not like any vampire that we have in pop culture already. These guys are running out of ammo.
There's a theory that the vampires have something to do with the hunt, that they exist to turn people into hunters, which I'm not a huge fan of personally.
I could see the vampires maybe just being hunt monsters that happened to have turned someone into a hunter, but I really dislike this idea that they're supposed to turn people into hunters, because
it also gives the hunt more agency than it seems the entities are supposed to have.
yeah, like it makes the hunt have plans, which I don't really like. It also...
It's also back to the thing of the hunt episodes being overly focused on being a hunter rather than being hunted.
hunt is the good guy entity problem.
Which is ridiculous because everyone knows the lonely is the good guy.
Hey there, buddy. How you doing? Real good job running away. Maybe just stay in Hollywood this time?
No more fire. No fire.
I was like, oh, he does look familiar.
They've ruined my face. The fire. I can still feel it in my wounds. They'll kill me. They'll come back with their brands and it will burn. I wouldn't talk, so they burn.
Yeah, I'd prefer the Magnus vampires either be hunt monsters or be like, I could see them being servants of like the stranger or something. But I don't like the idea that they exist to turn people into hunters.
They always come back. And it always burns.
That is... Firstly, I need to change my clothes. And then...
They always come back. Thanks. You'll never see me again.
You said that last time.
I'm gonna go somewhere no one will ever see this face again.
I'm getting strong beastly vibes from you.
Yeah. Oh man, I've got some cool face tattoos now. How can you ever love a monster like me who's just so hot and brooding?
Right? They took my beautiful face and they gave it symmetrical, badass-looking brands that are also
That look like they'd be
associated-
easily covered up with makeup anyways.
Yeah, and which are directly associated, you know, with a tragic and mysterious backstory. Like, this, you know, it just goes from like completely different from the generator one, doesn't it? I was hoping they would beat back on each other. I don't know.
Also, a vampire. It's not like vampires might have any sort of like ability to like magically heal stuff.
They needed a brand that used fire, which I guess might be more permanent. I didn't even shoot those explosives. They did themselves. This is their fault.
Get OSHA on the scene.
Alright, assault rifles are bizarrely inaccurate. We're doing this with a revolver.
The gentleman's assault rifle.
Also some blood theft. God, that's a heavy machine gun. I do like the idea that, like, vampires and monsters can be killed with, like, sufficiently heavy weaponry.
Yeah. We do get into the thing with this game where it's a little annoying that we've mainly fought with like regular firearms. The bullets are dipped in sunlight, right? Though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really feels feeling like, you know, we're a brand new vampire. I'm down with the idea that we, you know, we're still kind of scrounging for money, and you know, we suddenly need to have a bunch of lethal weapons, and so we end up with a lot of, you know, cheap little pea shooters and machine pistols and stuff like that. By the time we're getting into like proper War of the Ages, you know, Camarilla versus Anarchs stuff in downtown, it feels like that's the point when we should have assault rifles. You know, if we want them, if that's our style. instead we have to wait until we are like the baddest vampire in LA, but why does it take that long to get us to... It's just the Stare Og has a goddamn scope on it, so let's look at the options menu and see if there's a way to actually use it. I do not see any way to aim or... Yeah. There's no way to sprint.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Hang on, I accidentally tapped out.
Okay, I was worried for a second.
Probably should use the Deadliest Challenge first, I don't know.
Well, also my understanding is melee ends up sucking pretty bad in the game, which is you should be able to run around with a katana slicing people up or like being like a giant bat monster, specifically,
Right.
not a wolf monster.
Yeah, towards the end, and we're in that part now, like, you know, there's a reason this is kind of getting a little bit slower here, partly is because we said a lot about vampires, there's only so much left to say. So it's not me as in a podcast, you just specifically just got here, but, yeah, it is partly for that reason, but it's also partly just because this is the part of the game where it kind of slows down and doesn't look as good as the rest of it.
Yeah.
We're starting with the Society of Leopold. We get a bunch of almost pure combat missions. The Society of Leopold is actually better about being stealthable, but there's basically no persuasion left. You know, the entire social pillar of the game has just been knocked out.
When even with we talked about the Quagen, the quests felt very like silly compared to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, and there weren't as many of them. So they're definitely losing steam in Chinatown. Although, besides the presence of the Quagen at all, it was still at least like, there's not as much, but it's all still pretty good.
I knew Johansen would lure the servants of Satan, but I set this type for the Archfiend himself. Where is Lacroix?
You expected a little
Why would the Croy actually show up?